So Basel, first of all, what's funny is that we call it the ICC, Implementation and Compliance Committee. It's actually, that's a creation of one of the chairs, one of the committee in 2009, Juliette Voinov, not to mention her. Because there is no official title to this committee, and she wanted to emphasize that it's not only about compliance, but it's also about implementation, and she's right. And so it's like UN Environment, that's the terminology now for UNEP, and here it's now Implementation and Compliance Committee, but it's not the official title. But it reminds parties that it's not only about compliance, but also about implementation. And if you talk about implementation, obviously you're talking about facilitation, getting the parties where they need to be able to ultimately comply. But it's a first stage, let's say. Anyway, the committee and the terms of reference for the committee were adopted in 2002, COP6. And like I said, there's no legal basis expressly enshrined in the convention, but since the COP has the authority to establish subsidiary bodies as it deems fit, then it is sufficient for that purpose. And at the end of the negotiations, when it was adopted, you had the delegate from the Netherlands who made a statement in plenary saying this, we won't go against adoption, but just keep in mind that for us, this is not a model for the future. Why? Because it's the softest, I would say, compliance regime that has been adopted at that time under MEAs. So some parties felt a bit uncomfortable because they didn't go far enough in their view, in the way it was constructed. So the objective is to assist parties to comply with their obligations under the convention and to facilitate, promote, monitor, and aim to secure the implementation of and compliance with the obligations of the convention. So you have the two pillars of implementation and of the compliance. And then there's a dual mandate, which you didn't hear of under Montreal or under Kyoto, because this is specific to this one, but not only to that one. Rotterdam and Stockholm are following the same approach. I think biodiversity, the Cartagena Protocol has the same, but you'll hear about that later. I don't want to talk nonsense. But there's a dual mandate, so it's not only about focusing on individual party implementation and compliance, but also to review general issues of implementation and compliance. Under other MEAs, this is given maybe to another subsidiary body, like SBI under climate change. But under Basel, this committee has this mandate to review general issues of implementation. And that's super wide, of course. And when you look at the terms of reference, we'll see in a minute, it's extremely wide. So dual mandate, general issues, and this is usually not controversial at all. Specific submissions, that's where parties feel sometimes a little more uncomfortable. Now in 2009, a big step was taken by the COP, or 2008. The COP established within the Voluntary Trust Fund an implementation fund. So it's not a new fund, but it is within the voluntary fund, which is there to receive contributions to undertake project activities, by the Secretariat. And in this implementation fund, so a donor can decide it will put money there to assist any party that is a developing country or an EIT and that is the subject of a submission to the committee. And that looks a bit familiar, I guess, to what you heard yesterday about the multilateral fund, right, and the Montreal Protocol. It's in terms of the goal, the whole point of this is for the party that's facing difficulty to get a little help to be able to actually restore compliance. But the setup is different, right? Because it's under the purview of the COP. There's not a separate mechanism that was established, a separate fund. In terms of governance, it's traditional, I would say. It's a small committee, 15 members, 15 multiple of 5, so that there is equitable geographical representation, normally 3 per region. This is all basic. The members are to serve objectively and in the best interest of the convention, so there's some kind of distance between the parties and the committee member. And we actually see it in practice, that they actually take this role quite seriously, that they are there in the interest of the convention and not just to represent the interests of the party that nominated them in the first instance, and that's quite welcome. They're elected for 2 terms. There's a rotation, so that it's 10 elected and 5, and they are to have expertise in many areas. So it's not only lawyers. We usually have a very nice mix of legal and technical experts, which is really important because implementing the convention is not just for lawyers, right? Everybody has to be involved, and many questions sometimes are not at all legal and are technical when it comes to reporting, developing an inventory of waste, for example. You have to have this combination of expertise to be able to help the parties. So that's, and in practice it happens that way. There are a few lawyers, a few technical experts, some policy people. There's a bit of everything, a bit of a mix, and that's great. They have officers. They meet at least once a year. Rules of procedure apply. Decision making. They agreed on decision making. There's I insist on that because that's one of the difficulties in Rotterdam and Stockholm compliance. They agree that if there is no consensus on matters of substance, there is a 2/3 voting that's possible. It has never happened in practice. I mean, the committee, the way it works, they just work together and they try to reach consensus. If they did not reach consensus, there is indeed, in any case, this provision that if a committee member is not happy with the outcome because it was outvoted, then its views are going to be reflected in the report. But like I say, this is just there as a safeguard. In practice, it has never happened. The committee works together. There's a sense of, if you're working all objectively and in the best interests of the convention, most likely you'll find a way to agree on how to proceed. The meetings are public unless the committee is dealing with specific submissions, and in that case, there's this provision to protect the party that doesn't want the meeting to be public to say no. So usually they're closed, those sessions. But if there's a request by an observer to come in, then the committee and the party concerned have to say yes. It has happened in the past, in the case of Togo. Togo was doing so well and was very proud with its achievements, and we had a student actually from Japan, wanted to understand better how it worked, and Togo was just too happy to say yes, come and see how this committee works and how it's helping parties. A few parties have really taken, they really understood that the committee is first and foremost there to help. It's really about facilitating the implementation of the convention. For a large group of parties, though, it's not. The perception is quite different still today. So there's work in progress. And then the committee works a lot intercessionally by email. We have lead members, consultations, etc.